It's been almost a year since our worst fire in living memory.
We need justice, please. For everybody died, for all the children, for all the moms.
The people of Grenfell were failed, but nobody has been held to account.
Don't try and make me look like I'm the one who's angry for the wrong reason.
I'm not.
I'm angry for the right reason.
1 year on, a community is still waiting for answers.
Your design helped that fire spread, didn't it? So are you responsible for the deaths of those 72 people? It's gone. Hello,
We
sir. My
ask
name is
those
Richard.
involved how it could happen.
Do you bear any responsibility for that building being as unsafe as it was?
No, we don't.
We try to find out who's to blame.
That building, a perfectly safe building, was covered in plastic and insulation that burned like a bonfire.
And we uncover a scandal. Grenfell was wrapped in a flammable product that should never have been there.
All I can say, it is utterly wicked that this state of affairs has been allowed to arise.
Move back!
Guys,
Way back!
He's made the rope from his blankets and he sent it down.
It was the biggest single loss of life in the UK for almost 30 years. 72 people were killed by the Grenfell fire.
Look at this madness that's going on. Oh my God. Oh, you can hear a man screaming.
Oh, that's Tony. It's Tony.
Panorama was there a year ago.
We know that these people are dead. We've got a 12-year-old missing.
So I couldn't make it.
I don't.
No.
Is it still like my...
We were with Maria when she found out the worst possible news.
It doesn't go up. It's
Your camera.
It's dying up.
How are you?
And we were with Luca when he was reunited with the woman he saved.
Oh my God. As far as I remember, I know a big man who picked me up without thinking. I just opened the door and put me up. Oh my God!
After the fire, we stayed, with the community overwhelmed by grief.
This is my next door neighbor. I went for the funeral last Friday.
This guy here?
Yeah, the old guy with his grandson.
He was your neighbour?
He's my next door neighbor. He was my next door neighbor. It's very sad. All of those people I'm never gonna see anymore. I feel a guilt. At the night, I didn't knock on the doors.
But you collapsed outside that. The smoke was so thick you couldn't breathe.
I know, but then again, you know...
If you'd have knocked on that door, you'd have died.
It took months for some relatives to get confirmation their loved ones were dead. Maria's brother was on the 20th floor. He never got out.
Until now, there is no justice comes to the people who died. You cannot leave people like this. This can maybe easily happen in our country, but in UK, no way. In UK, somebody can be left to die, burned to death. This is impossible.
So how could this happen, and why, 1 year on, has no one been held to account? We will question the people involved. One fact is now clear. The disaster would not have happened but for a refurbishment that started in 2014. It covered Grenfell in flammable material. The architect was André Kuchel. His design created gaps that spread the fire and allowed it to get directly into people's flats. Now, the building regulations had become weak and unclear, but it was his job to make the plans safe. He failed. His new exterior turned Grenfell into a death trap. Mr. Kuchel didn't respond to our letters, so I'm going to try and grab a word.
Was your design to blame for the Grenfell disaster, sir?
Sorry.
Could you just answer my questions? Because your design helped that fire spread, didn't it? And the cladding, you must have known that cladding was dangerous. Please give us an answer. The people of Grenfell want to know. Sir, are you responsible for the deaths of those 72 people?
Mr. Kuchel later told us it would be inappropriate to comment because his firm is cooperating with the police investigation and the public inquiry into Grenfell. He said his thoughts remain with those affected by the fire. Mahad and his family lived in the flat next door to where the fire started. A year ago, they were made homeless.
When you see the ashes now, when it falls on the ground, it goes like dust, yeah? What kind of material was this made from? Who approved it? This is where the questions lie.
When I see Mahad a month later, he seems different.
I've been documenting things. I've been finding out how many survivors there are. I'm getting to the real gritty details of how many visitors there actually was in every person's house.
Yeah.
But the council and the government, central government, and all of you and everyone else would want to portray it's just the tenant and the occupant. But wait, hang on. What about our relatives?
He's upset because the police cordon around Grenfell has been left unattended.
I'm angry, of course I'm angry. There's an open coffin in our community, neglected by local government and local authority once again.
Yeah.
How can I not be angry? We've got relatives dead still in here. How do you expect me to feel? What's your name again? Richard.
Yeah.
Richard. How do you about this? Because you're being political, right?
No, I'm not being political. I tell you what, I've been really brutal with you now. Is what I think what happened there is a disgrace, and I've spoken to you about this at length. But what I'm worried about you is
disgrace. Is simple. Leave it at that, mate. We've lost families, friends, neighbours. Don't expect us to recover as if it was in a bike crash or a little, you know what I mean?
Why are you angry with me? Why are you angry with me, though?
Don't try and make me look like I'm the one who's angry for the wrong reason.
I'm not.
I'm angry for the right reason.
What's going on with Mahad? Huh? Mahad's very...
He's pissed off. I don't blame him, because he's been denied any access to get near his house or anything for weeks on end. And yet, look, it just seems that if you turn up here at the right time, you can go down and take pictures and gore.
He just seems really traumatised, though.
He is. He's absolutely traumatised. He's at the end of his tether. What support's been offered to Mahad? None.
The firms that carried out the work on Grenfell Tower have some of the biggest questions to answer. The main contractor was Ryden. They got the contract by undercutting rivals and then used cheaper materials. They failed to properly fill the gaps at the side of the windows which allowed the fire to spread inside. And it was Ryden who suggested swapping non-combustible cladding for a cheaper version that burned.
They were wrapped up in highly flammable material that also is highly toxic when burnt.
I can see that it gets to you now, does it?
Yeah. Because it should never have happened. It was totally avoidable, entirely avoidable. And all I can say, it is utterly wicked that this state of affairs has been allowed to arise.
It was a new combination of cladding and insulation, so Ryden had a legal responsibility to test it for safety. We don't think they did.
I've got him directly in front of me now.
Ryden's chief executive says he too can't respond because of the public inquiry.
This is a dead end.
But we think that's an excuse. We've been trying to talk to him for months.
Mr. Bond. Hello, sir. My name is Richard Bilton. I work for Panorama. I'm a reporter. We've written to you and I've sent you emails. I'd like to grab a word with you, if I may. I want to know why your company, Ryden, chose to use that cladding.
Sorry, hang on.
I'm allowed to. I'm allowed to talk to him. I'm allowed to ask him questions.
Sorry.
So if I talk to you, so I've written to you. Could you just explain to me why you use that cladding? You must have known, sir, that it was cheap and dangerous.
No, it wasn't. But look, honestly, now is not the time. I'm with my family.
But we've written to you so lots of times. I've sent emails. We've tried to get your side of this. That's all I'm trying to do. Yeah. Wasn't it your job to make that building safe?
What we did is we put the cladding that was specified up by Kensington and Chelsea Council. It was approved by the building control. It was approved by the local authority. It was approved by the architect.
But that combination, sir, it's not hard to find out that it's dangerous. Did you do any testing? Just be clear with me. I mean, this is your right of reply. So did you do any testing?
No, we didn't do any testing because we're not required. It was deemed to comply.
Would you go back now? If you could do it again, would you test again? The people of Grenfell, they would probably want to hear that answer.
We would work to the regulatory framework.
So you think that you were within the regulatory framework?
Absolutely, 100%.
And do you bear any responsibility for that building being as unsafe as it was?
No, we don't.
If I could just get one last question, sir, what would you say to the families of those people who died in that building?
Well, I think it's a terrible tragedy, an absolute terrible tragedy, and my heart goes out to them. Shall we move on?
Anyway, look, sir.
Despite what Mr. Bond says, the cladding system should have been tested. And we think it's illegal it wasn't.
Welcome to paradise. This is the place I recently got. On our right-hand side is a kitchen. I'm expecting my builders to come here to help me, so this is the first stuff in my fridge, so for good luck.
Luca has just picked up the keys to his new flat. It's a chance for a fresh start.
We're in the middle of the flooring at the moment, so I'm trying to make this space to feel like at home. So that's why I'm doing some work and some adjustments. It will be housewarming party. Lots of my friends, lots of my new friends from community side, my family from Grenfell Tower. We are not friends anymore, we are family now. So it will be something to remember, hopefully. There's no plan to start new life. It just happens unplanned, unpredicted. But this one is going to be a lucky one this time.
Maria has just returned from a memorial service for her brother in Egypt. Her mum wasn't able to make the trip. Maria has brought back messages from their family.
عايزينك تجمدي. Please, Amor, please. The pain is so painful and so deep. I tried to run away, but it doesn't work. I'm still got the pain. But I thought if I'm being with her with this state, I will make her more worse, and I don't want to see her like this. We need justice, please. Not for only Sham, for everybody's died, for all the children, for all the moms, for all the families. It's not fair anybody to go through what we're going through.
The more you look at what was on Grenfell Tower, the more horrifying it becomes. We have tested the two main products, the cladding and the insulation behind it. When the cladding gets hot, its plastic centre melts and burns. It immediately sets fire to the flammable insulation.
The fire spread up Grenfell in 15 minutes from the 2nd floor to the 22nd floor. And that is very, very fast fire spread. Because you had so much combustible material, that would be equivalent to having 4 large petrol tankers full of petrol all burning at the same time on Grenfell Tower.
Before the disaster, these two products had never been tested together. We have discovered the makers of both products knew they were being combined at Grenfell, but they didn't warn the project about the risks.
Knowing there's a combination going on the building and doing nothing about it, I cannot see how that is justified, apart from looking at the bottom line of profit.
Our investigation has uncovered a scandal involving the insulation. This is the type of insulation that was on Grenfell. This is not sped up. It burns this quickly. And that smoke is poisonous. It contains cyanide. We understand that nearly all of those who died at Grenfell were killed by smoke.
One of the insulation materials used on the tower produces large quantities of hydrogen cyanide when it burns, which is very lethal. It's 20 times more toxic than carbon monoxide.
How long would you survive being exposed?
Well, once you've collapsed, unless you're lucky enough to have someone rescue you, then effectively you're going to continue breathing until you've breathed in a lethal dose.
The insulation had passed a safety test for use in specific conditions, but the manufacturer knowingly misled buyers. Celotex said the insulation was suitable for refurbishing buildings over 18 metres in height. It wasn't. They also suggested it was suitable for use with a range of cladding panels. It wasn't. They were warned their marketing was misleading, but they didn't stop.
That is remarkable and staggering, and I think people will be extremely angry about that. It is unbelievable that people can operate like that.
Celotex say they want to express their deepest sympathies to everyone affected by the fire. They say they can't comment because they're cooperating with the police investigation and the public inquiry. But they didn't deny any of our allegations. And it gets worse. We have discovered the actual insulation on Grenfell had never been tested for tower blocks. Celotex used a different formula when they got a safety certificate. Panorama understands that product contained extra fire retardant. We think a more flammable version was then sold for public use.
Well, words fail me. This is absolutely mind-blowing. This material is all over the place.
How is that possible?
It's jumped up all the way along the flats. Look.
So it is now clear the insulation, which burned out of control on Grenfell, should never even have been there. Celotex knew it wasn't suitable. But they targeted the Grenfell refurbishment and specifically offered their flammable insulation. We have been advised that the company's behaviour could amount to corporate manslaughter.
That sounds like a very, very serious thing that's happened, if that's happened, and clearly that needs to be investigated, and if there are breaches of the law, then those people need to be held to account for it.
When we next visit Luca, he's back in a hotel. Incredibly, he's been through another fire. Remember that new flat? There was a fire next door. He's lost his home again.
It was 4 o'clock in the morning when I woke up in the room full of smoke. I wasn't sure is that a dream or is that reality? But then I realized there is a blue light outside. I just really, I don't know. Very confusing, pretty much, to get through all that stuff again. But luckily, I'm out. Can't talk about it. I'm pretty much lost. Maybe I'm not in right mood or position to talk about anything, because I don't know. It seems like I'm not open as I was before. Am I? Am I different? I'm trying to find myself as a... Am I? Am I getting a little bit closer than I used to be?
The people of Grenfell have remained close. Every month, hundreds gather to walk silently through Kensington. Luca's here, and Clarita, the woman he rescued, is with him. As they near Grenfell, the fire service provides a guard of honour. Much of the community's anger is centred on the company that managed Grenfell Tower. Kensington and Chelsea Tenant Management Organisation was run by Robert Black. His organisation oversaw the cost-cutting measures. They ignored repeated safety warnings from the fire service about tower blocks and from Grenfell residents who predicted a disaster. They didn't protect the people of Grenfell.
Mr. Black told us that they were simply managing Grenfell on behalf of the council and they relied on advice from experts. Here he comes. Okay, good.
He expressed his deepest sympathies, but he didn't answer our questions.
Mr. Black, hi, it's Richard Bilton from BBC Panorama. Can I ask you a quick question, sir? So Grenfell Tower, that was your job to keep those people safe, wasn't it? That was your actual duty. Did you fail in that duty, sir? It's no good pushing me, sir. Did you do that? I'm asking you the question. And is the reason that those people died because that refurbishment was done on the cheap? Sir, I'm just asking you straightforward questions. I've written to you, just answer the questions. It was done on the cheap, wasn't it, sir? The planning application was signed in your name. It had a cheap, dangerous cladding and insulation. Didn't it, sir? Why don't you answer the question? The reason is, sir, the reason that people get angry, I think, sir, it's no good pushing me. I'm trying to ask you sensible questions. 72 people died because that building, a perfectly safe building, was covered in plastic and insulation that burned like a bonfire. Do you take any responsibility? People of Grenfell want to hear your side. I want to hear your side.
There's a public inquiry.
There is a public inquiry, sir, but we want to hear from you.
There is a public inquiry, and we get the public inquiry.
As you know, in that area, you are the focus of a lot of attention because the planning application for the refurbishment was signed by you. The fire brigade warned your organisation. The residents warned your organisation. 72 people died. Do you think you could have stopped that if you'd listened to the warnings?
I think there's a public inquiry.
Give me one last sentence.
No, we're working with the public inquiry.
That it? You've got nothing to say to the people of Grenfell?
As the anniversary of the disaster approaches, Mahad and his family are still living in temporary accommodation. Luca is still in a hotel. And Maria is still waiting for answers.
We have to look for justice, and immediately, not years, because nobody will wait years. I will not wait years.
Today, the public inquiry finally heard evidence for the first time. But the government still hasn't banned flammable cladding and insulation. No change, no arrests, no peace for Grenfell's victims.
If you want to find out more about the Grenfell Tower inquiry, Eddie Mayer is presenting a podcast every day the inquiry sits, which looks in detail at what's been said and heard. You can download it from the BBC iPlayer radio app.